guys, welcome back to part 5 of Minpins by Roald Dahl. We left off here and hopefully you wrote some lovely descriptions using subheadings for the Minpins and all the things we found out about them. So let's carry on. While the children were practising on the robins, little Billy said to Don Minnie, "Is there no way in the world to get rid of that disgusting red-hot smoke-belching gruncher down below?" "The only time a gruncher dies," Don Minnie said, "is if he falls into deep water. The water puts out the fire inside him, and then he's dead. The fire to a gruncher is like your heart to you. Stop your heart and you die at once. Put out the fire and the gruncher dies in 5 seconds. That's the only way to kill a gruncher." "Now hang on a minute," little Billy said. "Is there by any chance a pond or something around here?" "There's a big lake on the far side of the forest," Don Minnie said. "But who's going to entice the gruncher into that? Not us, and certainly not you. He'd be on you before you got within 10 yards of him." "But you did say the gruncher can't see in front of him because of all the clouds of smoke he blows," little Billy said. "Quite true," Don Minnie said. "But how is that going to help us? I don't think the gruncher is ever going to fall into the lake. He never goes out of the forest." "I think I know how to make him fall in," little Billy said. "What I want," little Billy went on, "is a bird that is big enough to carry me." Don Minnie thought about this for a while. Then he said, "You are a very small boy, and because of that I think a swan could carry you quite easily." "Call up a swan," little Billy said. Suddenly there was a new authority in his voice. "But I hope you're not going to do anything dangerous," Don Minnie cried. "Listen carefully," little Billy said, "because you must tell the swan exactly what he has to do. With me on his back he must fly down to the gruncher. The gruncher will smell me and know that I'm very close, but he won't see me through all the steam and smoke. He'll go mad trying to get to me. The swan will tantalise him by flying back and forth right in front of him. Is that possible?" "Quite possible," Don Minnie said, "except that you might easily fall off. You've had no flying practice at all." "I'll hang on somehow," little Billy said. Then the swan, keeping very low, will fly off through the forest with the ravenous gruncher hot foot in pursuit. The swan will keep just ahead of the gruncher all the time, driving him crazy with my smell. And in the end, the swan will fly straight over the big deep lake, and the gruncher, now travelling at terrific speed, will follow him right behind. Presto, he's in the lake." "My boy," Don Minnie cried, "you are a genius. Will you do it?" "Call up the swan," little Billy ordered. Don Minnie turned to one of the robins, which had just come back from a practice flight with a child Minpin on its back. Little Billy heard him talking to the robin in a kind of curious twitter. He couldn't understand a word of it. The robin nodded his head and flew off. Two minutes later, a truly magnificent swan, as white as snow, came swooping in and landed on a branch nearby. Don Minnie walked over to it, and once again a curious twittery conversation took place. A much longer one this time, with Don Minnie doing nearly all the twittering and the swan nodding and nodding. Then Don Minnie turned to little Billy and said, "Swan thinks it's a great idea. He says he can do it, but he's just a bit anxious because you have never flown before. He says you must hang on very tight to his feathers." "Don't you worry about that," little Billy said. "I'll hang on somehow. I don't want to be roasted alive and eaten by the gruncher." Little Billy climbed onto Swan's back. Many of the Minpins who had flown away a short while before were now returning on their birds. Their tiny sacks were bulging. They stood around on the branches, staring in wonder at the sight of this small human preparing to take off on Swan. "Goodbye, little Billy," they called out. "Good luck, good luck." And with that, the great swan spread its wings and glided gently downward through the many branches of the big tree. Little Billy hung on tight. Oh, it was thrilling to be flying on the back of this great swan. It was wonderful to be in the air and to feel the air swishing past his face. He hung on very tightly to Swan's feathers. And suddenly, there it was just below them, the huge billow of orange-red smoke and steam coming from the nostrils of the awesome Gruncher. The smoke enveloped the beasts completely, and yet through the smoke, as they got very close, little Billy could just make out the enormous black shadow of some hairy monster. The snorting grew louder, and as the brute got more and more excited by the nearness of the delicious little Billy smell, the smoke began coming out faster and faster. Whoomp, 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 whoomp. Little Billy could feel the monster getting closer. Whoomp, 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 whoomp. Swan was flying back and forth right in front of the snorting cloud of smoke, tempting and tantalising the beast and driving him with greed. The beast, or rather the cloud of smoke, kept lunging at little Billy, but Swan was too quick for him and jinked away every time. The snorting grew louder and more ferocious every second, and the whoomp whomps of thick hot steam came pouring out thicker than ever. Once Swan looked around to see little Billy was all right. Little Billy nodded and smiled. He could swear Swan nodded and smiled back at him. At last Swan must have decided that they had done enough teasing. The great, thick, orange-red cloud was leaping up and down in a frenzy of hunger and desire, and the whole forest was echoing with the snorts and growls of the awesome creature. Swan glided round and headed in a straight line towards the edge of the forest, and of course the vast cloud of smoke came hurtling after it. Swan was very careful to fly low all the time, keeping just in front of the Gruncher, leading him on and on, threading a path carefully through the great trees in the forest. The scent of human food was very strong in the Gruncher's nostrils, and he must have been thinking that so long as he kept going flat out, he would catch his meal in the end. Now, I'm going to leave you on this page, and your final task for this book is, can you, first of all, there's two things. You can do both of them, or you can pick to do one. And you can just write this in the English book that we gave you, or you can just write it down on paper, that's fine. Can you write what's happened so far? So retell the main parts in the story in your own words. Obviously, you're not going to write all of the things we've read, but what's the main thing that's happened in the beginning and that's happened in the middle? Okay. Then the next thing is, can you predict what is going to happen next? So what do you think is going to happen? Are they going to make it to the lake? What happens when they do make it to the lake? What's going to happen after that? Okay, so make your prediction. Remember, prediction is a sensible guess. Maybe you could even use because. So why do you think that? Okay, and then the next part of the story is just me reading the end, and there's no task. You could watch that whenever. If you wanted, you could watch that as soon as you've done your task for today, or you could save it and watch it at the weekend. Okay, everybody? All right, bye.